The sirens screamed through the Galactic Academy halls, cutting through lectures, laughter, and alien chatter like a blade through air. Red lights flashed across the walls. Every cadet froze. For the alien students, that sound meant one thing: predator drill. Every species had learned to respect the word predator. It meant something ancient, something that hunted without mercy. The cadets scrambled for their stations, eyes wide, gills flaring, claws shaking. But one figure didn't move. It was the human. Cadet Mason Clark sat back in his chair, calm as still water, while the others panicked. His uniform looked the same as theirs, gray, tight, and marked with the Academy's silver crest, but somehow it looked sharper on him. Like he belonged in chaos. An instructor rushed in, her long silver limbs flickering as her translator chip activated. "Predator drill! All cadets to formation. Repeat, this is not a test." Mason raised an eyebrow. "Predator drill, huh? Which predator exactly?" The room went silent. Even the instructor froze. Her species, thin, translucent skin, always trembling, looked like fear given form. "You don't ask that question," whispered Karath, a scaled alien sitting behind Mason. "You run when they say predator." Mason just smiled faintly. "Run from what if you don't know what you're running from?" The instructor's eyes narrowed. "Human arrogance again," she muttered. "Always humor before logic." But Mason stood up slowly, stretching his arms. The lights dimmed to deep crimson. Emergency barriers slid into place. From the hallway, the rumble of metal doors locking echoed like distant thunder. The instructor continued, voice rising, "Simulation will begin in 60 seconds. You will respond according to Defense Protocol 9. The announcement cut off with a static crackle. The intercom died. Every alien head turned. The silence that followed felt heavier than gravity. A low growl rolled through the speakers. Deep, animal, almost hungry. Some cadets whimpered. Mason tilted his head. "That's not a recording," he said quietly. On the display wall, data flashed. Heartbeat sensors, temperature spikes, energy readings. "Something was moving in the lower decks. Fast! Simulation systems are down," said the instructor, now visibly shaking. This isn't a drill." The words hit the room like a bomb. Panic spread instantly. Desks overturned, claws scratched metal, and the scent of fear thickened the air. Mason's face didn't change. He calmly picked up his pulse scanner and walked to the front of the room. "Lock the doors," he said. Karath hissed. "Why?" "We must flee to the armory." "Then you'll meet it halfway," Mason replied. "You don't outrun predators. You make them regret chasing you." The aliens didn't understand, but something in his tone made them listen. Mason accessed the console, overriding the door locks with his ID code. "All right," he murmured. "Let's see what's playing Hunter today." From the corridor, a sound came, a scraping, wet, rhythmic drag, like claws over steel. Then a scream. Short. Cut off. A young cadet with blue skin collapsed, trembling. "It took them. It took the squad from Delta Bay. There was nothing left." The instructor grabbed Mason's arm. "We must evacuate. Humans may think they're brave, but you don't know what's down there." Mason's gaze was steady. "Then it's time to find out." He pulled a training rifle from the rack, checked its charge, and handed another to Karath. "Cover me," Karath stammered. I'm not trained for combat outside sim. You are now." The alien hesitated, then took the weapon. His claws shook, but he stood beside Mason. Around them, the others whispered, some in fear, some in awe. The human's voice was low but sharp. "Listen up. Whatever's on this ship is hunting you. But if you stay behind me, it'll think twice before touching you." The deck lights flickered. The creature's outline appeared on the surveillance screen for just a second, a blur of teeth and motion. Then static. A wave of dread swept through the cadets. The instructor tried to re-establish comms, but Mason was already moving toward the door. He didn't wait for approval. "Where are you going?" the instructor demanded. "To make introductions," he said. The door opened with a hiss. Cold air rushed in, carrying a smell like rust and blood. The corridor ahead was dark, except for flashing red lights. Mason stepped forward. Behind him, Karath swallowed hard and followed. The other cadets stayed silent, staring, The human turned his head slightly and smirked. "You all stay put. If it gets in here, just remember, scream loud enough and I'll come find it." Then the door sealed shut. The room fell into terrified quiet. The aliens exchanged glances, unsure if he was insane or heroic or both. But deep down, they all realized something the Academy had never taught them. The drill hadn't prepared them for humans. The hallway was a tunnel of shadows. Red lights blinked in slow, uneven rhythm, throwing shapes that moved when they shouldn't. Mason walked forward, pulse rifle steady, eyes sharp. Each footstep echoed too loudly, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. Behind him, Karath followed, tail low, claws clinking softly on the floor. His species were built for heat and deserts, not this cold metal maze. "You humans," he whispered, "you walk into danger like it's breakfast." Mason grinned slightly. "Only when it's interesting." The smell grew stronger, iron and oil and something else. Fear. They turned a corner and stopped. There were marks on the wall, deep gouges that hadn't been there before. Something had torn through solid steel like it was cloth. Nearby, a half-melted datapad still flickered, showing half a message. "Containment breach. Predator unknown." Karath swallowed. This wasn't part of any drill. "No kidding," Mason said. "The question is, why are we still breathing?" He crouched beside the scratches, studying them. The edges weren't clean. Whatever made them had claws, yes, but there was energy scorch, too. Hybrid weapons? Biofusion? That wasn't supposed to exist outside Black Labs. Mason stood. "Karath, how long has this academy been running drills?" "Decades." "Never like this." Then someone changed the rules. A sound echoed down the hall. Wet, clicking, deliberate. Karath froze. Mason tilted his head, trying to locate it. The noise stopped. Then, metal creaked above. A vent cover shifted. Karath pointed upward, whispering in panic. "It's in the ducts!" Mason's rifle snapped up. The vent blew open, showering sparks. A blur dropped from above, too fast to see clearly. Mason rolled, pulling Karath down with him. The creature landed behind them with a heavy thud. The lights flickered again, revealing a glimpse of the thing. It wasn't huge, but wrong. Long limbs, armor-like skin, no eyes, just ridges where they should be. Its mouth split open sideways, revealing rows of small, serrated teeth. It hissed, low and deliberate, like it enjoyed the fear it caused. Karath whimpered. "It hunts." "For fun." Mason raised his weapon, voice calm. "Good, I was getting bored." He fired. Blue energy lit the corridor. The shot hit the creature's shoulder. It staggered but didn't fall. Instead, it shrieked and lunged. Mason grabbed Karath and pushed him aside, swinging the rifle like a club. It cracked against the creature's jaw, sending it reeling. It was fast, but so was he. Humans weren't supposed to be stronger, just more stubborn. And stubborn was enough. Mason slammed his boot into the creature's chest and fired point blank. The second shot tore through its torso. It hit the floor with a wet crunch. For a moment, the ship went quiet again. Karath crawled forward, staring at the body. You killed it?" Mason crouched. "I don't think so." The creature twitched. Its body pulsed with faint blue veins glowing brighter by the second. Mason's instincts screamed. He grabbed Karath's collar and yanked him back, just before the creature's corpse exploded into liquid smoke that scattered across the floor and vanished through the vents. "What in all galaxies was that?" Karath gasped. "Adaptive bioform," Mason said grimly. "And that was the scout." Karath's eyes widened. "Scout? Then there are more?" Mason nodded. "There's always more," he tapped his wrist calm. "This is Cadet Clark to command. You've got live predators loose in the academy. Not simulated. Not friendly. Send containment squads. Static." No response. He sighed. "Figures." Karath looked around nervously. "We should go back to the others." Mason shook his head. "If it's spreading, the other decks are next." "I need to know where it came from." The alien's voice trembled. "Why you? You're not command. You're not even senior." Mason looked at him, eyes steady and tired. "Because command will hide behind blast doors. And someone needs to keep the rest of you alive." They moved again, deeper into the dark corridors. The hum of power systems was fading. Lights flickered and died one by one. Somewhere in the distance, a scream cut off midway, then silence. "Predator drill," Mason muttered under his breath. "You wanted a lesson in survival? You're about to get it." As they reached the maintenance deck, the walls began to pulse faintly with organic growth. Strange patterns glowed under the metal skin of the ship. Karath whispered, "It's changing the structure." Mason frowned. "It's not invading the ship, it's infecting it." He raised his rifle again, scanning the room. Somewhere inside the humming shadows, movement stirred. A dozen small shapes crawled along the walls, silent and fast. Mason exhaled slowly. "Looks like the drill isn't over." He stepped forward, eyes locked on the dark. The ship moaned, and something hissed in response. The hunt had just begun. The maintenance deck felt like another world. The air was thick and humid, every sound muffled as if the ship itself didn't want to be heard. Pipes lined the walls, dripping dark liquid that smelled faintly metallic. Somewhere above, the ventilation system hummed like a sleeping beast. Mason led the way, rifle ready. Karath followed close, breathing hard, his scales glistening with sweat. "What kind of thing melts into smoke?" he asked softly. "The kind made by someone who shouldn't have access to genetics," Mason said. Karath blinked. "You think someone made those?" Mason gave a small nod. "Predators don't escape drills. They start them." They reached a locked service hatch. Mason crouched beside it, hacked the panel, and the door slid open with a hiss. Inside was a control room, dark except for the dull blue light of an active terminal. The screen showed logs in alien code. Mason switched the translation on his wrist device and scanned quickly. Then he stopped. His face hardened. "What is it?" Karath asked, stepping closer. "It's not a malfunction," Mason said quietly. "Someone disabled the containment field manually. And they didn't just release one predator, they released a whole batch." Karath's throat plates quivered. "Who would do that?" Mason scrolled through the logs again. A name appeared. Commander Verthis, the Academy's security head. Mason exhaled slowly. "He's testing us." Karath stared in disbelief. "Testing? You mean this is planned?" "Yeah, but not for training. For observation." Before Karath could answer, the deck lights flashed bright white. The comm system crackled to life. A cold, smooth voice filled the room. "Cadet Mason Clark. You always were curious. That's why we selected your class for this phase." Mason looked up, expression unreadable. "Phase of what, Commander?" "Evolution," the voice replied. "The galaxy has too many species that run. We need one that adapts. And humans, you adapt better than most." Karath backed away, shaking his head. "You're experimenting on us?" "Correction," Verthis said calmly. "We are experimenting with you." Mason's jaw clenched. "You turned an academy into a hunting ground." "A necessary sacrifice," the commander continued. "If humanity is to stand with the Council, we must understand what makes you so dangerous." Static filled the line. Then silence. Karath was trembling now. "He's insane." Mason didn't answer. He was staring at the floor, deep in thought. Then he looked at Karath, his tone suddenly sharp and cold. "If Verthis wants to study predators, we'll give him a lesson he won't forget." He turned back to the terminal, fingers flying over the keys. Lines of code scrolled fast. "I'm locking every door to the command deck. He won't escape once we reach him." Karath blinked. "Reach him? You're going up there?" Mason grabbed a small EMP grenade from the rack. He started this. "I'm ending it." A new noise interrupted, the metallic scrape of claws against metal from the ceiling. Both looked up. Dozens of glowing slits appeared above them. Eyes, or something close. "Contact," Mason said calmly. The vents exploded open. A swarm of smaller predators poured out, fast, spider-like, each with gleaming teeth and twitching limbs. The room filled with motion and sound. Mason fired in controlled bursts, every shot bright blue light. The creatures shrieked, their bodies bursting into smoke when hit. Karath fired too, clumsy but desperate. "Keep them off the door," Mason shouted, but the creatures didn't stop coming. One leapt onto the console, snapping its jaws inches from Mason's face. He jammed his rifle under its throat and fired, the blast sending it spinning back into the air. When the last one fell, the room was filled with smoke and the stench of ozone. Karath was panting. How many more of these things are there? Enough, Mason said, reloading. But they're not the problem. What do you mean? The problem, Mason said, looking toward the ceiling, is who's watching. He pointed at a small camera lens hidden in the corner. Its red light blinked once, then went dark. They're recording everything, Mason muttered. Every reaction. Every kill. Karath's voice shook. So they're studying you. The human response, Mason nodded slowly. Then it's time to show them the real one. He grabbed his pack, slung his rifle, and started toward the elevator shaft. Command deck's 5 levels up. We'll take the maintenance lift. Karath hesitated, then followed. And if Verthis releases more? Mason's eyes glinted in the dim light. Then we stop being students. They reached the lift doors. Mason forced them open manually, revealing the narrow shaft inside. The power was low, so the platform wasn't moving. He tied a cable from his belt and hooked it to a rail. You ever climbed before? He asked. Karath looked down the long drop below them, endless and black. No. Good time to learn. He started climbing, one hand over the other, silent and steady. Karath followed, muttering curses in his language. Halfway up, they heard the growl again, deeper now, closer. The walls trembled slightly. Something's following us, Karath whispered. I know, Mason said without looking down. Keep moving. Below, faint blue eyes appeared in the dark, rising slowly up the shaft. Mason gritted his teeth. Let it climb. I've got something for it. He pulled another EMP grenade from his belt, thumb hovering over the trigger. Above them, a dim light flickered, the hatch to the next deck. Mason pushed upward, muscles tense. The sound of claws scraping metal grew louder. He looked down one last time and said quietly, You wanted predators, Commander. Here they come. He pulled the pin. The explosion shook the entire shaft. Smoke filled the shaft as the EMP blast faded. Sparks rained down like silver dust. Karath coughed, claws clutching the cable. Mason hauled himself up through the haze, his muscles burning. Below them, the glow of the pursuing eyes vanished. For now, they reached the next deck and pulled themselves out of the open hatch. Mason landed hard, boots clanging on metal. Karath collapsed beside him, gasping for air. That grenade could have killed us, Karath hissed. Mason wiped soot from his face. Could have. Didn't, Karath groaned. Humans call that logic? Survival, Mason said, checking his rifle. We're on the upper command level now. Verthis won't be far. The corridor ahead was different. Cleaner, brighter, colder. No claw marks, no scorch damage. Everything was intact. It felt wrong. Karath noticed it too. This place looks untouched. Because it is, Mason said. He's controlling the environment. Wants us to see this. They moved carefully, every sound echoing too loudly. The lights here were steady, almost comforting, but the air smelled sterile, like a lab pretending to be safe. Then they saw it, a wide glass wall at the end of the hall. Behind it, a control room filled with consoles and holograms. Inside stood Commander Verthis, tall and motionless, his silver uniform gleaming. He wasn't alone. Several officers watched from behind him, silent as statues. Mason raised his weapon but didn't fire. Open the door, Commander! Verthis turned slowly, his thin, alien face calm. I knew you'd make it this far. Guess your experiment's working, Mason said. The commander smiled faintly. More than you realize. Mason stepped closer. You used us as bait. I used you as data, Verthis replied. Every reaction, every heartbeat. We've learned more about human combat instinct in 1 hour than in 10 years of treaties. Karath slammed his claws on the glass. You killed cadets. Friends. Verthis didn't blink. Progress demands loss. Mason lowered his rifle slightly, voice calm but dangerous. You think you can measure instinct in a lab? You think fear makes us interesting? Verthis's tone turned cold. No, Cadet Clark. What makes humans interesting is that fear doesn't stop you. It drives you. You walk toward what others flee from. You're the closest thing this galaxy has to controlled madness. He pressed a button on the console. Behind Mason, the lights dimmed again. The sound of doors unlocking echoed down the corridor. Karath froze. What did he just do? Verthis's voice echoed through the speakers. Final phase. Real-time observation. From the far end of the hallway, shadows began to move, multiple, crawling low, fast, and silent. Mason exhaled slowly. He released the rest. Dozens of the creatures poured from the vents, their movements synchronized, their skin now shifting colors to match the metal walls. They weren't hunting randomly anymore. They were coordinated. Karath panicked. "We can't fight that many?" Mason's eyes darted to the glass wall. Verthis stood still, hands behind his back, watching like a proud teacher. "Yeah," Mason muttered. "He wants to see what I do next." He reached for his wrist console, scanning the systems. "Karath, the command deck has power lines running under this floor." "If I can overload them," the alien interrupted. "You'll fry everything on this level." "That's the point." He knelt, pried open a floor panel, and exposed glowing conduits pulsing with energy. "When I say jump, you move." The creatures were closing in, crawling along the walls, eyes glimmering like knives. Mason pulled 2 plasma cells from his rifle and wired them into the exposed conduit. Sparks leapt from the cables, flickering brighter. 3, 2. The first predator lunged. "Now!" He slammed the last wire into place. The floor erupted in blue light. Electricity surged through the metal, frying everything it touched. The creatures convulsed, screeching as smoke burst from their bodies. The energy wave shot through the hallway, shattering panels and blowing fuses. Mason and Karath dove behind a console. When the light faded, silence returned. The air smelled of ozone and burnt oil. Karath peeked out. The corridor was littered with blackened remains. Are they dead?" "For now," Mason said. But that wasn't all of them. He stood, brushing off dust. Through the cracked glass, he saw Verthis still standing. The commander's face was unreadable, but not surprised. "You expected that too," Mason said. Verthis spoke through the intercom again, voice calm. "You adapt faster than predicted. Fascinating. But adaptation without control is chaos." "Funny," Mason said. "Chaos seems to be working fine for me." He raised his rifle and fired at the glass. The blast hit, but the barrier held, reinforced. Verthis didn't even flinch. "I admire you," the commander said softly. "You remind the galaxy why humans are feared. But that fear needs a leash," Mason smirked. "You think you can leash this?" Verthis's smile widened. "We already did." A sudden sting burned across Mason's neck. He touched it. His fingers came back wet. A dart. His knees weakened. The world spun. Karath caught him, shouting, "Mason! Mason!" Through fading vision, Mason saw Verthis turn away, speaking to his officers. "Prepare the specimen for containment. I want to study the limits of his defiance." Mason tried to lift his weapon, but his arms felt like stone. His last thought before the world went dark was simple, cold and human. You wanted a predator. You'll get one. Cold. That was the first thing Mason felt when he woke up. The kind of cold that wasn't just around him, it was inside him. He tried to move, but his body didn't respond. His arms were locked in metal restraints, his legs clamped down on a steel table, white lights burned overhead. The room was clean, too clean. Every surface reflected his face back at him, sweat, dirt, a small streak of dried blood on his temple. Voices murmured nearby. Blurred at first, then sharper. Subject awake. Human vital signs stable. Proceed with observation protocol. Mason blinked until the blur faded. Behind the glass wall, Commander Verthis stood with his team. Their faces glowed blue under the monitors, calm and analytical. "Good morning, Cadet Clark," Verthis said through the intercom. "You've proven remarkably resilient. The sedative should have kept you under for hours." Mason's voice was hoarse. "You test your toys often, Commander?" "Only the exceptional ones," Verthis replied. "You see, the predators were never meant to kill you. They were meant to learn from you." Mason frowned. "You're copying me?" "In a sense," Verthis said, pacing. "Your reflexes, your aggression, your stubborn refusal to yield. The creatures you fought were prototypes. But the next stage," he gestured to a dark shape in the far corner of the room, "is something far greater." Mason turned his head slowly. There, inside a containment pod, something moved. A tall humanoid figure. Its skin was pale gray with faint human features, but its eyes, cold, reflective silver, were wrong. It watched him. What is that? Mason muttered. An improvement, Verthus said. A synthesis between human instinct and alien adaptation. The perfect soldier. It learns fear, pain, and resistance, but doesn't hesitate. Mason's voice hardened. You made a human predator, the commander smiled faintly. We made evolution. The hybrid creature stepped closer to the glass. Its movements were fluid, deliberate. Mason realized it was mimicking him, his posture, his breathing, even the way he tilted his head when thinking. You built a copy, he said. But you missed one thing. Verthus raised an eyebrow. And what would that be? Mason smiled weakly. The part that bites back. Before Verthus could reply, a loud crash echoed from the hallway outside. Lights flickered. An alarm blared. The glass wall behind Verthus shook violently. One of the officers shouted, Containment breach, level 3! Verthus snapped, How? We sealed every deck! The intercom crackled. A panicked voice came through. It's not the prototypes, they're dead. Something else is in the ventilation system, something fast. Verthus's expression finally cracked. He looked at Mason. What did you do? Mason met his gaze calmly. I didn't do anything. He tilted his head. But they might have followed me. The room lights dimmed. A deep metallic groan echoed through the walls. Then the ceiling vent burst open. A creature, larger, darker, with glowing blue veins, dropped onto the floor. The officers screamed. It was one of the original predators, but changed. Its body shimmered like liquid metal. It ignored the guards and went straight for the containment pod. The hybrid behind the glass moved too, pressing its hands against the barrier. Its silver eyes flared brighter. The predator hissed, striking the pod, cracking the reinforced glass. Mason strained against his restraints. Commander, if that thing breaks out, you're finished. Verthus barked orders, but chaos had already taken over. The predator slammed the glass again, and the hybrid inside responded with a roar that shook the floor. The glass shattered. The hybrid stepped out, calm, powerful, silent. The predator turned toward it, snarling. For a heartbeat, the two creatures faced each other. Then the hybrid struck, faster than anything Mason had ever seen. It tore through the predator with inhuman strength, ripping it apart. The room fell silent except for the hiss of broken machinery. Verthus stared, stunned. It obeyed. Mason looked at the hybrid. Its silver eyes shifted, meeting his. For a moment, he saw something familiar there. Recognition. Mason Clark, it said, voice low and rough. Origin confirmed. Verthus's face drained of color. It's linked to him, Mason smirked faintly. Told you. You built me a mirror. The hybrid stepped closer to his table, ignoring the armed guards. It looked down at him, head tilting slightly, studying him like a reflection, learning how to think. Mason whispered, You can understand me, can't you? It nodded once. Verthus shouted, Control it, now! But the hybrid turned, slowly, toward the glass wall separating them. It clenched its fist. The lights flickered again. Then, with a deafening crack, it punched through the barrier like paper. Verthus stumbled backward as alarms screamed through the lab. Sparks fell, smoke filled the air. Mason strained against his restraints, yelling, Stop! Don't kill him! The hybrid paused, glancing at Mason. Then it spoke softly. He is the creator. Mason met its gaze. He's the problem. The creature tilted its head, then stepped forward. The feed cut to static. Flashing red lights cut through the smoke. The alarms wailed like dying machines. Commander Verthus staggered backward, clutching the rail as his control room turned into chaos. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Screens cracked one by one. The hybrid stood in the breach, silver eyes glowing. It didn't move fast. It didn't need to. Each step left prints of ash on the floor. Mason twisted against the restraints, metal grinding. Listen to me, he rasped. You don't have to. The hybrid's head tilted toward him, recognizing the voice. It reached down, pressed its hand against the table's locks, and the clamps melted open. Mason sat up slowly, every muscle aching. Good, he muttered. Now let's end this, Verthus shouted from across the room. You can't control it, Clark! It's beyond both of us! Mason glanced at the creature beside him. Then we'll find out. The guards opened fire. Blue plasma tore through the smoke. The hybrid blurred, moving through the bolts like a shadow. One guard flew backward, armor crushed inward. Another's weapon froze solid, ripped apart by invisible force. Mason grabbed a fallen rifle and dove behind a console, firing short bursts to cover the hybrid's advance. He wasn't fighting against it, he was fighting with it. Verthus ran for the exit. Mason saw him reach the control panel and shouted, "You started this! You finish it!" The hybrid appeared behind the commander, silent as death. Verthus froze, breath shaking. "You exist because of me," he whispered. The creature's voice was low. "Then you exist because of him." It pointed at Mason. "Balance!" Verthus tried to speak again, but the hybrid's hand closed around his console. "End protocol," Mason called out. The creature obeyed. Electricity surged through the system. The lab's power core overloaded with a rising whine that shook the floor. Mason stumbled toward the escape hatch. "Move!" he yelled. "It's going to blow!" The hybrid didn't follow. It stayed beside Verthus, looking almost curious. Mason turned. "Come on!" The creature shook its head. "Containment required." It reached to the core's main valve, pushing energy back into the system. The light grew so bright, Mason had to look away. He climbed through the hatch, dragging Karath, alive but wounded, from the hall where he'd been thrown by the blast. The explosion that followed wasn't fire. It was light and silence at once. The command deck split apart, air rushing out into the stars. When the emergency seals dropped, the sound returned, a deep, metallic echo fading into quiet. Mason and Karath lay on the floor of the corridor, breathing hard. Through the shattered window ahead, they saw the remains of the lab drifting into orbit, glowing faint blue against the dark. Karath groaned. "Is it over?" Mason looked at the stars. "Yeah, for now. Verthus?" "Gone. Him and the copy." Karath sat up weakly. "That thing saved us." Mason nodded. It learned faster than he thought. They limped toward the emergency shuttle bay. The ship's systems were collapsing, oxygen thinning. Mason keyed the hatch and helped Karath inside. As the shuttle pulled away, the Academy shrank into a distant spark. Mason watched it disappear, jaw tight. "What will you tell the Council?" Karath asked. "The truth," Mason said. "That the Predator drill worked." Karath frowned. "Worked? Everyone died!" Mason looked out at the void, voice calm and low. "No, everyone learned." The alien studied him. "What lesson?" "That you never run drills on humans," Mason said. "Because we don't run from predators. We make new ones." The stars ahead glowed faintly as the shuttle entered jump drive. The light swallowed them, leaving the wreckage behind. Somewhere in the debris field, a single silver eye blinked once before going dark.